Angel, you've been waiting the longest here of the theists. Angel, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt. How are you?
I'm good. Hi guys, how are you?
Peachy.
Hi, how are things in Ireland?
Good.
I'm glad to hear that. I may have to escape there. My ancestors came from there, so I might have to go back.
Okay, great. Um, so I've been watching for the show for kind of a long time now. And I know you guys have heard like so many different arguments, basically the same arguments over and over again. So I'm well aware that I'm probably not going to convince you that a God exists. However, I just want to have just a nice discussion. So
Sweet.
I am black, and sorry, were you going to say something?
No, no, no. I'm happy to have a discussion about where you try to convince us of God or about whatever else. And I was just saying, I said sweet, so please continue.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt you.
No, 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 that's
So
fair.
I was having a discussion with my friend. She's in Black Atheist, and she was like, "Why do you believe in God after all the hardships that Christianity put our people through?" Because like we're both African, and I was like, I understand like that point, but like I view religion as neutral. Like I don't really neutral to positive. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of biased. Um, like for example, like when it comes to Christianity, you have one extreme when you have the KKK, and they were lynching black people and doing all these terrible things, and of course, white supremacy, etc. One thing that really stood out to me is that she said that Christianity is the perfect breeding ground for white supremacy, and I disagree with that. And then on the other hand, you had people like Martin Luther King and also the civil rights movement. Like a lot of it was backed up with community and protesters, they would congregate within the church, and um like there was just so much community in there, and I think that's like just absolutely like beautiful. And also in the Bible itself, it said, love your neighbor as yourself. And then you also had Jesus, preaching about love and community and all that stuff. So my question to you guys is, because I know you guys aren't fans of religion, so I know like there are good sides and there are bad sides. um why is it that a lot of you guys would be persistent that even though religion does have its benefits, why are you guys persistent on the fact that it's bad? Because I
Easy.
remember, I think I saw a clip
Angel,
of.
I can just take the question as is and
Okay,
grant you that that is the case. And it's not
okay,
difficult because
okay,
everything that is good that comes from religion can be done without it. But many of the things which are bad that come from religion happen because of it. So all the things that you're describing, you basically gave a super cherry picked argument. The Bible has this great thing, and the religious people have done this great thing. And many times the things you are describing of is in spite of the other people or in spite of the other verses. Jesus says, love thy neighbor in the book where he is God, commanded the murder of a lot of neighbors, commanded genocides, commanded slavery, all types of things that are terrible. And it's, if we're looking at different systems and comparing, you can sit there and say, I um I look at the Bible and it's good, and sure, some people are going to use it for bad, but it's not an arbitrary some people are going to use it for bad. The people who are most often using it for that are very apparently evil to you and I, Angel, are the people who take the words of the Bible most literally. Fundamentalism, which is that concept of a strict adherence to the words on the page, almost always breeds these horrible people. And so it's not actually Christians, like I would dare say yourself, Angel, who are reading the book and going, I see the words, but I'm going to morph it to fit what I don't even know is a more humanist worldview. But that's what it is. It is that these religions, while they have great things like community, you can have community without that, and you're always catching up to humanism. Whereas secular humanism, you read the Humanist Manifesto, there's no way to read those and accidentally go, well, if I shift these words, I can be perfectly evil. There's no way to defend that. No reasonable way to. Whereas the reasonable way to defend that you should be an evil person from reading the Bible is just to take it literally.
Yeah.
I understand. Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something?
No, go ahead, Angel. I'll go after you're done.
Okay, but like, let's just say hypothetically, um, like a robber came, like, okay, you were like robbed twice, okay, and the first
But
person is like an atheist. He breaks into your house, and the second person is like, okay, I'm robbing your house because like of like my spiritual beliefs. Do you guys think that the situation is different, even though the outcome is the same?
how do
If
I
that
know the
makes
first
sense.
person's an atheist? And so there's nothing about burglarizing my house that is in any way clearly tied to any aspect of atheism or Christianity that I'm aware of. I mean, atheists, there's no moral precepts there, but as a secular humanist, thievery would be immoral. And the Bible, which is the primary source that I'll use for Christianity, would suggest that it's also wrong to break into my home and steal things. So in those two scenarios, whether or not the person's an atheist or theist, I don't give a shit.
But Matt's got
Right.
the first point Matt made there. I don't know if there's one that you understood when you said it. Ask the question, Angel. If a person does something that we would consider evil, like rob somebody, because the book says to rob somebody, and an atheist robs somebody, their motivation, the atheist motivation, will not be atheism. But in that scenario, with the hypothetical commandment in place, their motivation would be religious. There is no atheism can't motivate you to do anything.
Yeah, I would say, I grew up primarily a Southern Baptist. And so when I if I just look at the bare bones question, is Christianity a breeding ground for white supremacy, which is what the call screener put in briefly? My answer is yes, but not because of tenets of Christianity.
Right.
It's not like there's explicit things in the Bible that support white supremacy, but the ideas in there have been used to provide cover complicitness with that. And I mean, there's actual data. So there's a survey that was conducted in 2018, found that white Christians, including evangelical Protestants, are nearly twice as likely as people who are religiously unaffiliated to say that the killing of black men by police are isolated events rather than part of a pattern of how police treat African Americans. Similarly, white Christians are about 30 percentage points more likely to say that Confederate soldier monuments are symbols of Southern pride rather than symbols of racism. And you can have a debate about what is it really showing here. But what this demonstrates, it also pointed out that white Christians are about 20 percentage points more likely to disagree with the statement, generations of slavery and discrimination have created conditions that make it difficult for blacks to work their way out of the lower class. That is just almost a straight, unavoidable, undebatable fact that what America did by creating this massive class disparity by enslaving African Americans and then holding off on treating them as equal, holding off on giving them the right to vote, even, we move through this, has put people from different racial backgrounds in different starting blocks in the race. And so while the starting gun goes off at the same time for everybody, there are some people who have a metaphorical head start. And if white Christians are 30% more likely to disagree with that sentiment, and they're more likely to say that, hey, when police are killing, black men, it's not really part of any sort of pattern. It's just, an isolated event. When the data show otherwise, then it seems that there's a problem within Christianity, not necessarily with what the Bible says or with what any particular denomination or minister saying, but because there is this, it does promote an us versus them mentality. And I remember, as one example, my mom was opposed to interracial marriages and tried to use the Bible as justification for that, up until one mixed race couple joined our church, and my mom got to meet them and found out that they were just absolutely lovely people. And all of a sudden, this changed my mom's view on whether or not mixed race couples should be married, or whether it was ungodly to do. My mom probably changed her mind easier and quicker than many other white Protestant Christians are going to change their mind on those subjects. And so it ends up being a place not where everyone's a racist, not where every minister or church is advocating for racism, not where the correct interpretation of the Bible is in fact racist, but it ends up being the sort of place where implicit racist ideas are fostered and provided cover, because you already have an us versus them mentality, and you get to other those people. Oh, we're not like the Jews. Oh, we're not like, the Catholics. Oh, we're not like this. Oh, we're not like, even the Ethiopian Christians and stuff with their background. They have a different, and it's weird, and it's just viewed as, mystical stuff. It is a bunch of ignorance. And what Christianity does is allows that ignorance to stay shielded and keeps people from having to answer for the views that they have.
Angel, I do want to, before we turn it back over, I do want to actually hit one thing that I realized we blew past, and it's actually the most important thing here, because the original question at its core is, why, with all of those good things, do we still, do people like Matt and myself still argue against religion, fight against religion? And actually, every single thing that Matt and I have presented so far isn't the number one reason. The number one reason is they are evidently not true. Because whether or not something is, believing in something is good or not, is not my top one, isn't my highest priority. I don't want to believe in something, even if it's good, because it's good. I want to believe in something if it's true. Lots of terrible things, like cancer, are true, and it's actually useful to believe in them, that they are true, even though they are horrible. And that's the number one thing, Angel. If there's a main motivation, it should be, if you are going to still adhere to this, we should at least have established whether it's true or not. And so, Angel, more important to me than what you're getting out of your community, more important to me than any of that stuff would be, do you care whether what you believe is true? Now, the mic back to you, Angel, please.
Yeah, of course I want to believe in what is true, but I also want to believe what is true and what is beneficial. I think, like,
No. In this scenario, we're talking about true or beneficial. What I'm suggesting, Angel, is if your religion is not true, but it's still beneficial, do you still want to believe in it? Because the implication of your original question is that we're atheists. Obviously, we believe that they're not true, and yet we're still fighting them despite that you think they are good or often good. The implication of that is, if something is good and untrue, you shouldn't fight against it. And so what is it? Do you still, your religion, Angel, whatever it is, and I think I was picking up that it was a type of Christianity, would you want to still believe it if it wasn't true and you knew that?
Hello.
I don't think so. No.
Sure. Now, I do need to step away for a moment. I got to take care of some health stuff, but I'm going to leave you with Matt, and you two can back and forth there.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
fine.
Oh, wrong one.
But yeah, something that Jimmy said, he was talking about human, is it being a human secular? I'm not sure what the term is.
Secular
He
humanism.
was basically, yeah, so he was basically saying something uh like no one does something wrong in the sake of human secularism. I apologize if I misunderstood his argument, but like
What he was saying
I'm
is that there's nothing like if you listed the principles of secular humanism, no principle of
okay.
secular humanism could be used to justify a racist act or a thieving act or a murderous act. Um, that's one of the differences between secular humanist principles and some, not all, but some religious principles.
But hasn't there been cases of forgive me if like the information isn't accurate. Hasn't there been cases of the USSR and like their harmful principles, like weren't they like starkly anti-theist or
They weren't, that wasn't an instance of secular humanism. That was an instance of we're going to eliminate particular religions, not because of any principle of atheism. There is no principle of atheism, but by the goal of essentially making the state God. The problem with an imposed atheistic Russian regime, etc., is rather than seeking to eliminate religions that can't, through reason and debate and convincing people, they wanted to outlaw it. Secular humanism doesn't advocate for outlawing it. I would never outlaw religion. I would outlaw certain practices if your religion says, "Hey, we get to run around, um, uh, burning our initials into everybody's forehead." No, you fucking don't. It doesn't matter, doesn't matter how wonderful your religion is outside of that. It doesn't matter if it's the perfect, best religion ever. You don't get to do that to other people. And so we have boundaries there. What the Soviet Union did wasn't an implementation of secular humanism. What it did was it was an elimination of religions that would compete with the idea of the state being the God, state being the church.
okay. I understand that. Um I think I want to say something, but I think you'd like disagree with it. But I want to
Well, that
know if
happens all the
you
time.
okay. But what if I said that um true Christianity is about love and like compassion and equality and understanding each other? What would be like your response to that?
I don't know how you prove what true Christianity is, um, because what's the foundation upon which you're going to base that? Is it the Bible? Because how do you pick which parts of the Bible you're going to pay attention to and ignore in order to reach that conclusion?
I guess what makes sense, like for example, um like a lot of people think when it comes to like kindness, etc., etc. Uh, we know that Jesus, like we give the examples of Jesus and all the miracles and how he preached about kind and all the miracle he did, and also like about how God is love, so we should be love and we should show kindness.
But Angel,
I think you,
why?
I
Oh,
think you
sorry, go
don't.
on.
I think you don't. I didn't even know you were back. I don't have that screen up.
There you
I
go.
think you don't have a good understanding of what the Bible actually says, and so what you're doing is cherry picking based on what you'd like it to say. And the question was, how do you tell which parts of the Bible to ignore and what's the justification for ignoring them? Because if you want to say that it's all about love, then a God who loves you isn't going to send you to hell for not believing, is he?
Um, I mean, I think of it as in kind of like I think of it kind of like as like a punishment thing. Like
Punishment
for
for what?
example, like for sinning.
Oh, no, no, no. This was for disbelief. So let's say you and I have both sinned the exact same amount, but you believe in Jesus and I don't. Am I going to go to hell forever and you're not?
I suppose so, yes.
How is that just? How is it possibly just to doom me for eternity for crimes that were finite? How is it just to suggest that because you believed something I didn't, even though we were equally good or bad, that you get a good reward and I get a bad one? Does that
Mm,
seem fair?
no, but you never know. Like God could forgive you when you die.
Well, that's speculation. I don't believe that there is a God. I don't believe that there's any me after death. I think the very idea of a soul is beyond ridiculous and the most obviously false thing religions have ever put forward. But you just argued, Angel, that God isn't fair, but he might be. That the
Well, I'm gonna
model
be
the
honest.
model isn't fair, but God might decide to be fair anyway. And it's, this is the thing, is you can say this is all about love. Cool. What about the really good secular humanist who was raised in an atheist family, who loves everyone, um, who promotes equality, who has avoided just tons of traps of bigotry, who is just by everyone's measure, by any reasonable measure, a vastly superior and preferable human being to Donald Trump. And yet Donald Trump gets to go to heaven because he's a Christian and this other person doesn't. How does that make sense? And how does it fit with the notion that this is just all about love?
Well, I don't believe that someone like Donald Trump is gonna get into heaven. Um,
Why not?
honest,
What is the
because
criteria
he don't.
under which what is the criteria under which someone gets into heaven, and how are you able to tell who will or won't? Because the Bible says you don't know.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, Matt. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not gonna pretend that I do. But um,
That's not sufficient,
but I
Angel. Angel, you came here and advocated for true Christianity. So if you say you have the right Christianity and you know what true Christianity is, how can you say you don't have all the answers or at least sufficient answers when there are other people who know a lot more about the Bible than you, who have the version of Christianity you would say is not true? What makes your true Christianity correct and their
Yeah, true.
Christianity wrong when they pull from the same Bible and can cite more verses than you can in support of theirs?
well, I well, grew up. I grew up Christian, and I was raised Christian, and I, go to church very often. Um, and when it comes to, Christianity, um, I'm gonna be. I guess it's just like a feeling that's like within your heart.
Okay.
Um,
Angel, that you're not answering my question because you just answered another. You just gave another reason that they would give. So a person with the wrong version of Christianity. Let's go with something we can both agree with. Westboro Baptist Church. Every time you give an argument, I'm going to give an argument as a member of the Westboro Baptist Church. Westboro Baptist Church people absolutely say they get affirmation in their heart. God writes the truth on their heart. They feel in their heart that it's true. Why is your feeling in your heart good enough reason for you to believe that you have true Christianity, but not Westboro Baptist Church?
um, I'm trying to think of something that's like very unique.
There isn't. This is the
Um,
problem, Angel, and this is the thing we come across with all of these conversations. Angel, do I prefer you to a Westboro Baptist Church person? Of course I do. And here's the reason. You're not really letting Christianity guide your life. You are more drawn to something more similar to secular humanism, and you're trying to make it fit within a Christian framework that you have community pressure from being raised in it to be able to sufficiently fit in, essentially. The people who are, you will not be able to defend your true Christianity in any way that Westboro can't. And in fact, Westboro has a stronger case than you.
Yeah. Because what you're doing,
Can you?
which I generally admire, Angel, is that you've taken a religious idea and tried to make it better. Like, there's all this stuff in the Bible that you absolutely would not like. The Bible supports slavery. I mean, there's no way to deny that. It absolutely allows for, prescribes prices, tells you who you can enslave, how long you can enslave them, how you can beat them. All of these, it goes into ridiculous detail. If there was an all-knowing, all-wise, all-powerful God of the universe, it would have been very easy. When listing off the 10 commandments, number 1 would be, it is immoral to own another human being as property, period. Then you don't need any of that stuff about slavery in there. The same is true with regard to gender equality. With the Bible, I did a whole
Matt,
video
sorry,
on.
can I just, I'm so sorry. Can I just interrupt you for a sec? So I remember my pastor was like I know like we get in like a lot of like fights and stuff because I'm probably like the most like progressive person in my church. But he basically said when it comes to like slavery and all that stuff, he said that it's not that God is promoting that. He said that it's like it's like a history book. Like this is how it was
He
like
lied.
describing what happened. Is that true?
Your
No.
pastor, your pastor's lying to you. Exodus 21. Do you have a Bible?
Yeah.
Open to Exodus 21.
Okay. It is
Got it?
open.
Exodus
Yeah.
21. What version of the Bible do you have? I'll switch to that one.
New King James Version.
New King James. Let me see. King James Plus. Where is my NK? I may not have a New King James. Let me just go with the modern King James.
It's
See if
okay.
that's there.
It's okay.
So
You can just read out whatever you want.
Sure. Exodus 21 starts with laws about slaves. Starting at, it says, and these are the judgments which you shall set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th shall go out for nothing. If he comes in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he was married, his wife shall go out with him. But if his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. Now, right there in the first 4 verses, it's setting up special rules for Jewish servants that are different from non-Jewish servants. But what the Bible does is it says, if you buy a Hebrew slave, then you have to let him go after 6 years. And if he came in with a wife, that wife shall leave with him. But if you bought a single servant and that servant was given a wife while he was yours, at the end of the 6 years, when he goes free, his wife does not go free, and neither do his kids. Unless, starting in verse 5, the servant says, I love my master, my wife, and my sons. I do not want to go free. And verse 6, his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall bring him to the doorpost, and his master shall put an awl through his ear and basically pierce his ear and mark him as property. And he shall serve him forever. Now, it's the rules as you continue down to like verse 20. Oops, hang on. Yeah. If you go down to verse 20, if you beat your servant and he doesn't die within a day or two, there's no punishment. So there's a completely separate set of rules for non-Jewish slaves. And then there's a separate set of rules for Jewish slaves. And then the Bible specifically tells you how you can trick Jewish slaves into being your slave forever. So when somebody tells you this is about indentured servitude, it's not, but that's also immoral. When somebody tells you this is just debt slavery to pay off a debt, it's not, but that's also immoral. What this actually does is instead of, it would be very easy, and God should know, absolutely, right off the bat, to tell everyone clearly, for if God can inspire someone to say that it is immoral to eat shrimp, then certainly God can inspire someone to say, thou shalt not own another human being as property. And yet, if you go beyond Exodus to Leviticus and Deuteronomy, it specifically says that slaves, you shall buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you. They are your property. You can pass them on to your children. Now, I don't know about you, but I would go to your pastor and I would say, hi, will you be Matt Dillahunty's slave under the biblical laws for slavery? Because I bet the answer is no. And if the answer is no, then the question needs to be changed to, why is the Bible advocating for a clearly, grossly immoral position on whether or not you can own and beat human beings?
By the way, feel free to ask your pastor if he'd like to either call in, or we could set up a full-on debate on this very topic if he disagrees.
But yeah, you're being lied to.
Okay. I still disagree, but I don't mean to be annoying. But like,
Angel, but do you disagree on any grounds besides you firmly believe going in that your pastor is right, even though you've been shown why he's wrong? Because it sounds like you disagree purely as faith, that you have faith we're wrong, even though it was just explained to you with facts.
I'm just sorry. I just don't get how an all-loving God, someone who, died for our sins and has, created the earth, promotes slavery.
I agree.
just cannot
Angel,
comprehend.
I agree. And the answer is the Bible, the Old Testament, was not writing about an all-loving God. The all-loving God of the Old Testament and the New Testament don't exist. The people who wrote the books were writing out there are a bunch of different reasons they could have been, but certainly self-interest and retention of power are high up there on the list. And the reason why slavery was written about was because the people who had the power to write about it wanted to hold slaves, not because the Bible is written by or inspired by God.
But you just did something, Angel, where you said, hey, there's part of the Bible over here where it suggests that God is all loving and created the world and sacrificed himself to save us. And there's another part of the Bible over here that suggests that same being is okay with slavery. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to throw out the part about slavery and say that they got that wrong. What's your justification for throwing that part out instead of throwing out all the other part over here? You have no evidence that God is all loving. You have no evidence that God exists. You have no evidence that God sacrificed himself. Jesus didn't sacrifice himself. Even in the story, Jesus at most gave up a weekend and then got to continue being God. There was no sacrifice. There's no demonstration that there's anything to be saved to or saved from. You are taking the parts that feel good to you and prioritizing them and dismissing the parts that don't feel good to you, which I'll say is absolutely consistent with the answer you gave me about 10 minutes ago when you were talking about how it feels. The problem is the Bible is the only thing that you have to base the entirety of Christianity on. And if the Bible says you can keep slaves and never says thou shalt not keep slaves, what's your justification for being opposed to slavery? And meanwhile, there is zero good evidence that a God exists, that God sacrificed himself, but also that doesn't make any sense. If God wants to forgive us, why does he need to come down and do some blood magic ritual, come down, take human form, sacrifice himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he's in charge of? The system doesn't make any sense. And when it doesn't make any sense, the correct thing to do is to throw it all out until it does make sense. The correct thing is never to pick and choose the parts that feel good to you.
Okay. And I 100% understand what you're saying. So can we just go back to just like the slavery thing? So I know, my pastor said that it is kind of like a history book, and you oppose that and you take it literally. Can you tell me why you don't think it's like a history book?
No. Hang on.
I do think it's like a history book.
Yeah, a history of God, supposedly God's words. Let's say, Angel, it is a history book. In the chapter that Matt gave you, is
Yeah.
it or is it not presenting that in history, God gave people methods of being slavers?
I thought, the verse is not about God. I just thought that this is how, you know,
Have
people.
you read the Bible yet?
Yes, I have. And we discussed this in church, and he said, this is how, my pastor said, this is how it was back then. And
Yeah.
That back then,
this is
under
how,
God's command, correct?
not under God's command, as in this is just
What's
how,
the
um,
justification? What is your pastor's justification? Because when we look at the Old Testament, the collection of the law and the prophets, etc., it
yeah.
isn't a history book in the sense that it's not reliable the way a good history book would be, but it is a historical chronicling of what Jews believed. And so if you're going to say that Jews got the wrong belief in Exodus 21 about slaves, how do you know that they got the right belief in Exodus about the 10 Commandments?
I didn't think about that.
In the New Testament, what does Jesus say about the Old Testament? About the laws that were written in the Old Testament, what does he say?
Well, we're taught to follow Jesus and the New Testament.
Right. What does
And
Jesus say about the Old Testament, about the law and the prophets, if you believe in Exodus as actually being the book basically written by Moses, as most Christians do, or at least many do? It's in Matthew. Do you remember the chapter and verse? I think it's 5:17.
yeah.
Okay, go to Matthew
Sermon on the Mount.
5:17. Go read, pull that up and
But
read it out loud, would you please?
I don't have my Bible here handy. I was going to show you one thing. Exodus 21 has the law about slaves. If you turn back a single page to Exodus chapter 20, that's the 10 Commandments. It's a page. It's 26 verses, actually. It's 21 verses, just to get to the bulk of the thing of the 10 Commandments. So in the exact same book, by presumably the exact same author, on one page, you have the 10 Commandments, which Louisiana is now requiring be posted in every school, and where Christian nationalists and Christian dominionists are trying to suggest that this is the foundation of all law, which is a damnable lie. But no, I don't think your pastor is going to say, oh, the Bible got the 10 Commandments wrong. But on the very next page is where the instructions are for how to treat your slaves, how to trick your slaves, how you can beat your slaves. How do you figure that in the same book, one page apart, the 10 Commandments are there, and that's incredibly important, and we got it definitely right, even though they're absurd. But on one page later about the slaves, we got that wrong. It doesn't make any sense.
Did you pull up 5:17?
Yep.
You want to read it out loud?
Do you not think that I have come to abolish the law or prophets? I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them.
Right. That's literally him talking about the thing you're saying that we can now ignore because that's just history. And yet Jesus is saying the Torah, the words of the prophets from the Torah, he isn't trying to get rid of. In other translations, not the, I guess it's not King James, it even says to not change one jot or one tittle.
It's the next verse.
Oh, is that the next verse? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5:18. Not there to change one jot or tittle. The Torah as written, the Old Testament, he's good with it. That's his law. That's his endorsement during the Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus doesn't get to ignore it, but you get to just ignore it because you say it's just a history book, despite he's calling it the words of the prophets.
And for the people who were shocked that I don't have a Bible right next to me, technically, I have two, but they're New Testaments. The other Bibles, we moved bookcases over to the spare room, and I moved my regular NIV that I keep handy here. But I always have a Bible. I just didn't have the New King James.
I
But
know we've been talking for a while, so I hope I didn't like I'm not like boring you guys or disrespecting you guys
not
or
bored at
anything
all.
like
No,
that.
no, no.
We kept
Hey,
going.
my biggest thing is that we should probably let you go. We've got other callers to get to.
Okay,
Take some time,
that's fine.
think about this, read, put together a list of questions. But the big thing is the question I think you need to ask yourself most is, if one part of the Bible says something that I agree with, and another part of the Bible says something I disagree with, how do I tell whether which of those two parts is wrong and whether or not I'm wrong? Because with Exodus 20 being the 10 commandments and Exodus 21 being, you know, the one of many passages on the laws regarding slavery, I don't know what justification anybody has for suggesting, oh, well, thou shalt not kill. It got that right. But, you know, and it got it right that if a man struggles with or fights with another man and a woman comes in and grabs him by the balls, then you're supposed to, cut her hand off. And I just did a video weirdly about bestiality. Probably just got us demonetized for merely uttering the word, even though it's legal in 2 states. It's legal in West Virginia and New Mexico. But the Bible prescribes the death penalty as if anybody has sex with an animal. And it has a passage that says if a man lies with an animal, you're supposed to kill the man and the animal.
Yeah.
And if a woman lies with an animal, you're supposed to kill the woman and the animal. The Bible is so sexist that instead of saying if anyone lies with an animal, you're supposed to kill that person and the animal, that it has different, because everywhere else it has different rules for men and women. But because the rule's the same here, it had to list it twice. If a man has sex with an animal, you kill the man and the animal. And if a woman has sex with an animal, you kill the woman and the animal. That's how sexist the Bible already is. But at the end of the day, why the fuck are you killing an animal? At a minimum, that's the victim in a violation of consent with regard to bodily autonomy. What God could possibly want you to kill the animal that somebody had sex with? And why is this important enough to be included in the Bible twice at least? The things that the Bible is concerned with. Let's get the 10 commandments out. And on the next page, we'll talk about how we're going to treat our slaves and mistreat our slaves. And then a little further down the line, we'll just, anybody has sex with an animal, you're going to kill them, and fuck it, we'll kill the animal too. It's ridiculous. There's nobody who could read the Bible cover to cover without a bias and conclude that this was the work of an intelligent, wise being, or that it was representative of high thought on morality or any other subject. This is the scribblings of people trying to chronicle how their God was the better God than all these other ones, and how they were the protected special creation of a God. Not that God loves everybody. God doesn't love everybody. God picked the Jews. God created Adam and Eve and it went wrong. The entire Old Testament is a chronicle of it going wrong for God over and over again, and how the Jews are disobedient. As my last thought here, Angel, consider the story of the Exodus. I've given this example before. Let's imagine that you're with a friend who's pregnant and you're in a foreign country where you don't speak the language. And your friend goes into labor and you hit your knees and you pray for God to help you out. And all of a sudden, a ball of fire appears in front of you and you feel compelled to follow it. And you help your friend and you follow the ball of fire, and it leads you over to a car that is running and has the doors open and the keys in it. And you get you and your friend in the car, and the ball of light starts going down the highway. And as it goes, all of the other cars get off the highway to get out of your way. And that ball of light leads you directly to a hospital. You witness all of that. Is there anything that could ever happen for the rest of your life that would convince you to worship some other God?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I really, really don't know.
I don't either.
Uh,
I think that it would be impossible. And yet the Bible would have you believe that the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, something that historically we are confident never happened. There is not evidence for it at all, but that they were led out by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. They were fed manna from heaven. They parted the Red Sea and walked across on dry land. They traveled on, fed manna from heaven. Moses disappears for a few days to go have a conference with God. And when he comes down, they are already crafting a golden calf to have a new God to worship. What does that tell you about these people? It tells you that they are fickle, and that they think they can manufacture their own God. When the God that they worshiped was doing great things for them, hey, we're going to stick with this God. We're this God's chosen people. And the second things got a little hairy, they're like, fuck that God. Let's make a new God. We'll make a golden calf. These are the people whose story is being told in the Old Testament. And it is embarrassing to think that otherwise intelligent people can look at this and say, yep, I see why God picked those people. This isn't a comedy of failures. This is a glorious treatise on God and the world. It's a dark comedy of errors that is sexist, that has supported racism and slavery. It is homophobic. There's nothing there about equality. And the Bible's view on love is something that I don't recognize. If I love someone, whether they love me back isn't going to determine what I think of them. It may determine whether or not I engage with them. What kind of parent creates a torture chamber in their basement, sticks a note on the fridge that says, do all your chores or I'll torture you forever in the basement, and then leaves and never interacts with anyone again? Christianity is absurd and immoral, and the Bible is the problem with it. And it does, while it doesn't necessarily create racism, it does provide a system that will be complicit with atheism, or be complicit with racism and hide the consequences of racism. But anyway, that's a ton, Angel. We had 45-minute call with you where we covered incredible ground, and I don't want to, it's probably already overwhelming. Just take some time and think, and
go back and watch
call
the
back
call
if you
again.
come up with better answers.
Yeah, go back and watch the call again, because there were other challenges in there that I think would be great for you to think about, like when we were talking about you versus Westboro and exclusive good reasons. Because at the end of the day, the thing you need to be figuring out is, do you have a good reason to believe it's literally true? So go back and watch, and definitely call back.
Okay. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Angel.
Yep. Thanks, Angel. By the way, Jimmy, you're going to want to go to a one-up of you at the start of this next call, because I'm going to also slip away for a half a second here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow. I'm the executive producer of The Line. And at night, I sneak into Matt Dillahunty's house and I trade his cereals for other cereals. He comes out and he's like, wait, these are cereals I buy, but I swear I had different cereals. Anyway, would you like to support this channel or any specific show? You can do so over on Patreon or in channel memberships. There are special tiers for special shows or for the channel at large, and it helps us expand programming as well as hopefully very soon launch it in podcast form. Now, also, if you'd like to support, you can like, you can subscribe, you can leave a comment or a super thanks, which is a special highlighted comment that you pay for. Those are fun. And, screw the algorithm, go check out something over here, I suppose. Boy, I hope I can still put those icons there, because if I can't, this is going to look really stupid. I'm going to go buy some Cocoa Puffs and switch out Matt's mini wheats now.